is a pro at it, but we're very happy that we caught her in the middle of a new process. But her interest is in storytelling, time and memory, the juncture of personal realities within film narrative, and working in the gallery space. And this again is something that all of the students here are, interested in, is working in how you negotiate those things that are really important. Are you a fellow at Southampton now? Still?
No,
That's over.
Got rid of them.
But she said this is the final week. More importantly, this is the final week of an exhibit up at the Lux that is devoted exclusively to Alia's work, and that's why we're beginning this one. So there's still time to go up and see the exhibit, right? There's a couple more days.
Until the 10th of February.
Until the 10th of February. And that's what we're doing. And so I don't, I'm not sure, I don't know if I really want to start until this guy comes and messes around. How about, do you?
Back to front, in a way. Mm-hmm. As opposed to showing finished pieces of work, I'm going to concentrate initially on the piece of work that I'm working on at the moment. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to backtrack into how it connects with previous work. Uh-huh. So, and I've made 2 small edits that are actually just works in progress, and I'm basically going to talk over the first one, and that's how I'm going to start the film. Not the film, the talk. And so basically I am doing research. I grew up in Glasgow, and I left when I was around about 17, 18 years old, and I've lived the rest of my time in London, but have always returned to Glasgow because my father never left Glasgow. And then in about 2012, my dad became ill, and I spent most of the next couple of years with him in Glasgow, looking after him. And the series of films that I'm going to concentrate on all belong to that period, including the film that I'm showing, the work in progress that I'm showing now, which is looking at my own personal history and my family history in Glasgow, and trying to combine that with the greater Asian community that lives in Glasgow, and public and private mythologies. So, and I'm trying to find links between my own personal archive in that they're my personal memories, and then I'm also have found a series of high 8 videotapes that my father took between 1990 in the 90s. Yeah, started in the early 90s up until about 2000. Some of which I've never seen, others of which I've known existed because basically he was pointing the camera at me, or my brother, or my sister, and that we would all get quite annoyed at his new toy.
She needs to get onto the internet, in other words, through this computer.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find a sort of I'm trying to map out all of these different histories, and when I went back to Glasgow, I mean, living in London, something that I was very always aware of was the lack of representation of Scotland's minority, which is an Asian, predominantly Asian minority, and how that sort of politics of representation, politics within the community, sort of relationships between that community and the wider community.
How about if I just
sort of we're not at necessarily a similar state of affairs as they were in London. So I was always curious about that. So when I went back and I worked with the BBC, I did an artist residency, and the film that I made with the BBC was to do with me accessing the BBC archive. That was one of the questions that I asked the archive, was how did they represent their own ethnic minorities within the archive.
Yeah.
So this whole project has developed from that initial question. So I'm not going to say any more until they figure it out. So I grew up with the hills visible from the skylight in my bedroom, a secret cigarette, our laughter mingling with the soft rain of suburban Scottish night. So this research has developed from the once simple task of returning to the city after an absence of 2 decades to care for my ailing father. Hence, the film marks a period of mourning in relation to my father's death and the city he loved. Glasgow has become synonymous with my father to me. The city pulls me, and when I am in her presence, I brush against my past in a way that allows me to inhabit my present more fully. I will use the way that my family's history is entwined with that of the city we lived in, and the public and private mythology that we constructed around this relationship. Facts I chose to believe that are almost certainly false, and events that I always believed to be fantasy that may, after all, be true. I will utilise personal testimonies and archive material, as well as other historic moments relevant to Glasgow's past, including my own memories, to explore various ways of narrativising a set of Glasgow stories that would eventually culminate in a long-form experimental documentary. These testimonies, framed around the notion of private and public mythologies, will be gleaned from a number of interviews, some of which have already taken place, with members of Glasgow's diverse Asian communities. So the first thing that I'm going to go through is a Hi-8 tape that my father took in the winter of 1995 to 96. But until about a month ago, I didn't know even existed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read out a text that I have written in relation to watching this piece of footage, and how it's taken me about a period of 6 months. In fact, the first time I saw it was in September last year. And then I'm working with some producers in Glasgow, and they keep encouraging me to look at my personal archive. And then I found the Hi-8 tapes, and I had to transfer them. But my father died 2 years ago, and so I have a huge reluctance to look at all this stuff. And even when I found the stuff, I couldn't look at it properly. So I would look at a bit, get distracted on purpose, not look at it, phone someone up, look at it, blah, blah, blah. So that was the whole process. Worry about the technical stuff. So basically distract myself from witnessing the tapes. So I'm going to show the first one, and then maybe we could put the lights down a bit. I keep returning to a Hi-8 videotape my father shot in the winter of 1995 to 96, that until a month ago I didn't even know existed. I'm looking at her house.
Could you speak up?
Yes.
Today is the 25th of December 1995. I'm looking at her house, the one we grew up in, and it's covered with snow. My father has walked part way up the hill. It's all handheld. He continually comments on the scene, but the tape has degraded, so it's difficult to catch exactly what he says. He walks past the house. He wants to show the effect the snow has had on the branches of the trees, I think. And I suppose that is the point. I can't really make out what his intention is, and every time I look at this footage, I seem to glean a different meaning. But in order to start writing, I have to grapple with it. It's uncomfortable. I want it to mean too much. Initially, I thought this film was a sign When this footage was being shot, I had come to visit my father and to tell him I was pregnant with my daughter. He was upset because he disapproved of my partner and disagreed with my choice. He withdrew. So great was his disappointment, he was unable to speak to me. Viewing the footage in the present, I imagined that my father was making a video diary, a legacy for the granddaughter he thought he would never see. Fast forward 18 years. We are both sitting on the edge of my father's bed. He tells me he thinks he doesn't have long to live, a couple of years at best. He doesn't think he will live long enough to see my daughter's wedding. He died the next morning. Sunday, 29th of January 2018. I'm still trying to figure out the dates. I'm trying to ascertain if my father knows I'm pregnant and that I will keep the child. My father's voice. This is May the 7th, 1996. I am filming this after the winter. You have seen the same pictures of the house and the garden, and now it's spring. I am interested in felt realities. A month before my daughter is born, he zooms into apple blossom. As we get closer, the blossom becomes less distinct. He cannot hold on to it. In his attempt to show, he seems to reveal the unattainability of his predicament. A month before my daughter is born, he zooms into apple blossom. As we get closer, the blossom becomes less distinct. He cannot hold on to it. In his attempt to show, he seems to reveal the unattainability of his predicament. After my father had died, I shot 16mm film of the patterns formed by condensation within the perished double glazing of our front room. The shots are a series of extended, long focus pulls that dwell on winter light refracting through the prism of the spores, multiplying in the damp air, before focusing fleetingly on the exterior world. The spores are formed through bacteria in the air, my father's breath. Watching this, the thing that is most recognisable is the exertion of my father's breath.
Tuesday, the 6th of April 1986, slave hit, very heavy. It was cheese. All good to it was very long. It was eating good. It's very good. And then the cheese. Really sweet. Still eating the guy from front of the guy.
I write, 30th of January 2018, I write, "This conscious reluctance to allow phenomena to become discernible haunts the footage my father took decades earlier. I look at the footage again. It's just my fantasy. It's me. I cannot bear to look. He started this project just because of the snow. I haven't told him yet. The dates are mixed up in my head, and I realised that he started filming before I arrived. The initial urge to film predated and was therefore nothing to do with my news. We look through siphons. Our attempts at observations are attempts to connect. Making becomes an endless process of re-looking, of trying to find a meaning, a point where I locate. I had been edging the footage on frame by frame, trying to locate a juncture where he registered an emotional response to my news. I wanted to work out where one day turned into the next, to discern a change in the nature of his filming, to identify where in the chronology I arrived in Glasgow, and from this, the moment I told him. But the snow exerted a uniformity that camouflaged all markers of time. After each incomplete viewing, I impose a new set of meanings onto my father's list. At first glance, I skip over my appearance. The dates change. It's 27th of December 1995, but his voice is garbled or eaten up. 2 days have passed. I'm not sure if I was there on the 25th or if I had just arrived on the 27th. He continues with his ritual of showing and then voicing the name of the plant or object the camera is pointing at. 31st of January 2018. I'm still trying to figure out the dates. It's a testament of mundane artifacts. The reshuffling becomes death-like. It's almost as if he is listing all the artifacts in his tomb that he will take with him to the afterlife. He is making an index of them so that he can impart something of himself to his unborn grandchild, who, at this point in time, he believes he will never see. I have got distracted and leave the computer. Nothing is working. When I come back, the computer seems to have developed a glitch. It's looping over a sequence of around 10 to 15 frames, where my father is trying to get a shot of a crow flying. He moves rapidly in close-up from eye level over green leaves, up into the blue sky. The computer is edging itself slowly forward, imprinting itself on top of itself, so that the leaves become geometric shapes, like diamonds, giving way to an indistinct crow silhouetted against a blue sky. For some reason, the audio part of the file